Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today I'm here to review 3 different games that I got from a Kickstarter that I backed a while ago. This was from Board Game Tables. They usually bundle a few games together when they do these Kickstarters. In this Kickstarter, I received Basketboss, Habitats, and 9 Lives. So I got 3 games in this bundle. Got them about a month and a half ago, and I've played each of them a few different times. So I'm ready to review them, and I'm going to review them from my least favorite to my favorite. And for Board Game Tables, I do tend to like this company's games. They usually make these games that are pretty simple, but have quite a bit of depth to them. And so that's what I was kind of looking forward to for these particular games. So let's start with my least favorite and go to my favorite. And the least favorite game was actually the reason why I backed this Kickstarter. That is Basketboss. Basketboss is a basketball themed game. It's sports. I was excited. I've talked about this before, but there's not a lot of sports themed board games out there. In this particular game, the theme is you are basically the GM of a basketball team, and you're trying to put together this team and go through several seasons, win championships, basically getting the most points each season. And yeah, it's basically just an auction game. In this game, each round, certain players are going to become available for you to auction off. And this is a very tight auction. You don't have a lot of money. So each round, these players are going to come available, and you're going to auction them off. And it's very tight, like I said. You don't have too much money. So if you bid $3 or $4 on a player, you're probably going to get them. You put them into your section. You start with 5 basic players, which are just one-star players, and you're going to be buying these players that have multiple stars, hopefully, on each of their seasons. What's interesting about these players is each season they're going to basically use up one of their years, and it's a big, long strip, and each year is a certain line, and after the year, they move up. And so they could get better or worse or stay the same. They're just constantly in flux, though. So you're going to have to try and pay attention from year to year. And each year you want to have basically the most stars for your section of players that you have. And some players are going to get you money back at the end of the year, but like I said, you're not going to have a lot of money. If you get a player that gets you $2 back, you're in good business right there. So you're going to have between like $0 and $10 usually throughout this whole game. But each year you're going to get basically a championship trophy for whoever's got the most stars for that year. And those trophies are going to be worth points. And then you're going to move up your players. They're going to age basically. And you're going to do the same thing, auction off players and do everything throughout the round again. This is a game I wanted to really like. But the fact that this is such a tight auction brings this game down a little bit for me. I like auction games, but I don't like games that are like so tight like this. I like to have a lot of money when I'm bidding on things. Because in this game, it's like you have to really decide which players you want, and that's where you're going to have to spend your money. So I didn't really like that tight auction. I did like the aging of players thing, but it makes the game feel really, really abstract to myself. Rather than a basketball team game, it feels very abstract for myself. But what brings this game really down to, I'm rating this game a 6, is this rule book is really bad. It's not for the reasons that most rule books are bad. Most rule books are too long. This rule book is way too short. There are several sections that are very vague, and I've never played this game. All of these games are basically reprinting and redone by Board Game Tables, but Board Game Tables does this thing where they really make small rule books. In this one, I think they messed up because the rule book is so small and the rules are so vague that I'm not even sure if I'm playing this game right. So, I mean, unless someone else taught me and they knew how to play it before, we had several people reading the rule book while we were trying to play this one, and we're like, we think it's this, but we weren't quite 100% sure we were playing absolutely correct. So yeah, it's getting brought down to a 6 because of that rule book and because of that tight auction, which wasn't particularly for me. With a good rule book, this game might go up to about a 7, but I'm not quite sure because, like I said, I'm not even sure if I'm playing this game right, which is bad. You know, I've read 1,000 some rule books in my life, and this is one of the worst rule books I've ever read. So yeah, Basketboss is going to get a 6. Going on to the next game. Next game is a small trick-taking card game. This is 9 lives. If you don't know what a trick-taking game is, trick-taking games are basically you have a deck of cards, and the deck, has different suits on it, and whoever's the lead player is going to play out a card of a certain suit and number, and everybody else is going to have to play a card of that suit and follow, and whoever's got the highest card of that suit wins. Or you could play the trump suit, which in this case is purple in this game. And then that trump suit would win. And so yeah, in this game, you have to predict each round how many tricks you think you're going to win in this particular round. So if you think you're going to win 3 tricks, you have to lay your cat token beside this board that shows how many tricks you think you're going to win. And you can be very precise. You can say, I think I'm going to win 3. And it's also like a 7 or something like that. 3 or 7. And you're going to predict that. If you guess precisely certain numbers, you are going to win 4 points if you're correct. Or you can lay your cat sideways along the board and cover a couple different numbers. So you're like, I'm going to win either 3 or 4 tricks in this round. And if you get that right, you're going to score 2 points. If you are wrong on your predictions, you're going to lose 1 point for each trick, basically, that you were incorrect by. And so for trick-taking games, for especially simple trick-taking games, they have to do something for myself that makes them a little bit more interesting, because there is so many trick-taking games out there now. So if you have a simple trick-taking game, you have to throw in some kind of different variation that makes your game different than other trick-taking games. And this game does it in a couple different ways. I've seen games where you predict how many tricks you're going to take, so it's not that. What's interesting in this one is whoever wins the trick actually gets to pick one of the cards from that trick that they won back and put it into their hand. They cannot pick their own card that they just played, but they're going to pick one of those cards that was part of that trick that got won. Another little difference in this game is you can actually see what suits your opponent has, because the backs of the cards are the same color as the suits of those particular cards. So if you have like a red 3, your opponents can see you have a red card. They can't see what number that you have, but they can see which types of suits you have in your hand. So that causes for some interesting decisions in this game. I did like this game enough where it's going to get put into my repertoire of trick-taking games. And I do like trick-taking games, like I said. This is going to get a 7 rating. So yeah, it separates itself a little bit enough for those simple trick-taking games for me to enjoy it that much. So yeah, 9 Lives gets a 7 rating. Let's go on to the final game of the day, and the one that I like the most, and it by a large margin, actually. This is Habitats. Habitats is a game with a bunch of different tiles, and you have a grid of these tiles, and you have a car of your color on this grid. Every player has a car on this grid, and on your turn you're going to move your car either forward, left, or right, and take that tile that you're driving on, and then you're going to replace a tile on the place that you just left. So you're going to be moving around this grid with your cars, taking these tiles. When you take a tile, you put it into your own little grid that you are making. And these different tiles have different things on them, like animals and butterflies and different tiles that are going to score you points. How you're going to score points is not for the tile themselves, but you're going to score that tile if there's certain tiles adjacent to those tiles. So if you have a gorilla in front of you, which this is a nature-themed game, you're making this big resort in front of yourself, you are going to score that gorilla if he might need 3 grasslands beside him and 1 forest card beside him. So there's different situations that your cards need to, objectives that your card needs to comply with in order to score those animals. So it makes it pretty interesting. Another little interesting thing, that there are 3 different years in this game, and all the years are going to have different objectives that you're going to meet, and you're competing with the other players, trying to have the most of whatever that particular year is calling for. Like, you want to have the most flowers, or you want to have the most different types of animals, or different things like that. So yeah, it causes for an interesting game. This game is actually an older game. Like I said, all of these games are older games that got redone. But they took Habitats, the old game, and made Nova Luna out of that, which, if you don't know what Nova Luna is, it's an abstract game done cooperatively with Uwe Rosenberg. I have that game. I like that game. I like Habitats more, and I think it's because of the theme, and I think it just works a little bit better. So yeah, I'm giving this one an 8.5. I think there's a lot of interesting decisions in this, and I really like that grid that you're making, and that you have so many interesting choices of how you're going to do this. Everything works really well in this game. It's simple, but it's very thinky. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's one that I highly recommend checking out. So 8.5 for Habitats. And that will conclude this review of this Kickstarter bundle. Overall, I was pretty happy with this Kickstarter. I mean, there's one game out of here that I didn't really like, but two that I really did like, and one of those games, Habitats, being a game that I love and I'm going to keep in my collection for a very, very long time. So just make sure to comment down below your thoughts on some of these games, if you played them, if you played the old version, if you played the new version as well, your thoughts on this Kickstarter, this company. Either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at the board meeting in the future. Hope you all have an amazing day. Take care.